Good morning, everyone. Today's topic is post COVID-19 global dynamism. So, this topic actually I have taken from yesterday's newspaper. In the yesterday's Hindu newspaper, Rakesh Sood wrote some information about how the global order may change post COVID-19 normalcy. So by using that information, I came up with certain elaborations. So if you see, right now everybody knows. So initially, it's a global pandemic that created a huge health challenges across the globe. So along with direct impact on the global health, we started seeing the indirect impacts of this COVID-19 into the other sectors. It impacted the country specific economy. It impacted onto the social values. It impacted international relations. So everywhere now we are seeing there is an impact of COVID-19 in almost all these sectors. So now today we will be discussing about how COVID-19 may create a kind of challenge, or how it creates a kind of impact into the world order right now. Will it act as a kind of catalyst, or things business as usual? So in this context, let us try to understand about global dynamism. In fact, this global dynamism what we are discussing right now, it was not actually started during this time of COVID-19. So COVID-19 is just acting as a catalyst to the already established new dynamisms, because this global dynamism is a slow phenomenon. Sometimes certain aspects like the present COVID-19, they will be acting as a immediate factors, like what we have seen. Suppose for example, if you take World War One, the time death of Ferdinando, it broke out World War One in the similar way. But here I'm not linking up World War One's immediate reason and this COVID-19. But here, COVID-19 is actually acting as a catalyst to the already churning world relations. So here, world relation means definitely here we have to take two countries, especially here. On one side we have USA, and the other side we have the China. Because until China comes up in the recent past, especially from last 10 years onwards, post 1990s, post collapse of the USSR, the world entered into the what you call unipolar world. The world started being dominated by the America and the American allies, the West. But now, with the emergence of China as a major player, not only in terms of economy but also politically, now it started creating a challenge to the recently established world order. So to this unipolar world, now China started acting as a factor. This started creating challenge to the established world order. This created a kind of dynamism. To this dynamism, the present COVID-19 just started acting as a catalyst. So it may amplify or it may take back. So the world order can be amplified, or the world order can be maintained as status quo. So will the COVID-19 really create a kind of impact or not? So that's what we will be seeing right now. So in this context, I came up with certain questions. How the world actually seeing this under this COVID-19 in the world? Different parts of the world came up with different kind of questions. Suppose if you take this west in the sense, here we are combining United States and the rest of the OECD countries, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development countries, and the West, the so-called developed world. So, if you see the West, right now there are questions that are being raised. So, suppose, for example, like the question that I gave here, up to what extent we should promote globalization? Right now, one of the reasons for sufferings to the West is because of this globalization, because of this free movement of goods and people. They could not able to stop it. So, eventually, because of that, now they are also facing this health crisis. So these kind of questions are being raised in the West right now. Whereas when it comes to China, China is more like China, especially in the recent past, the country that is very much authoritarian, very much statist. Statist means you're completely under the control of the state. So the country where there is no freedom of press, there is no individual rights, but still this country right now promoting the what you call globalization. It is actually going against protectionism. It wants more integration with the global economy. So this country, one of the reasons why it wants this, because it is ambitioning now. So it is ambitioning to become a superpower. So the question in front of China right now is as early as possible, it wants to come to the normalcy. It wants to contain the COVID-19 pandemic so that again it can chase the dream of to become a superpower. So, in this way, on one side, China is trying. That's the reason. If you see right now, China, it is aggressively going for the containment. It is doing all it can. It is it like it left no stone unturned. It opened all the options at any cost it want to contain. If you see in the yesterday's newspaper, in the yesterday's Hindu newspaper, there was a graph that was given. When I was clearly observing the graph, China was able to drastically reduce the number of cases according to the information that we got. Though we haven't yet got any official figures from China, whatever information we got from that information, we were able to come up with that graph. So it was able to drastically reduce the amount of cases. So that means its containment model is very much effective. The Chinese model might not be effective in other parts of the world, but it is becoming effective in China. So in this way, in China also, they have this kind of questions. When we will be coming to the normalcy so that we can again bounce back to ambition or to chase our dreams of becoming superpower. Then we have this India. If you take the case of India, so India right now, again, we are at the inflection point right now. So we can tap the global potential. At the same time, we will be having the challenges. So how India is converting its challenges into opportunities, that's the billion-dollar question now. So how India has to reorient its strategies, what India has to do so that it also can tap the global potential once the world reaches the normalcy after once this COVID-19 pandemic reaches to a final conclusion. When these things are going on, if you take the case of West Asia, one of the major sufferers right now are West Asian countries, because for them the main source of income is oil, selling of the oil. So right now, because of the reduced production, there is a dip in the oil prices. The demand got reduced. When the demand got reduced, the supply also got reduced. Then so there is a less demand. So the oil prices got reduced. At the same time, along with this, they have their own internal challenges. So the West is having its the West Asian countries having their own challenges here. So here I took these four questions. You may think like why I didn't take other questions. Yes, we can take up African countries, we can take up Latin American countries, but when it comes to the geopolitics, as of now, their role is there, but not beyond like it's not that much bigger so that they can actually influence the world order as of now. We have the Latin American countries and we have the African countries. They also have a sizable share of economy and they too can influence. But right now, the major players are the West, China, and the emerging players are like Asian countries and India. So in this context, we will be actually discussing the global dynamism. So we reduced our scope to these areas: Asia, Western countries, and in that Asia, to be specific, China. So in this context, I took up these questions. Now, if you come to the first thing, like why the West has to fear, as I mentioned previously. So this global dynamism or the trying for a new world order, it was not actually started all of a sudden. Just as I mentioned, COVID-19 is just a catalyst here. It was already started some few years back. Suppose, for example, if you see in the 2016 general election itself, we have seen this. One of the reasons why Trump has to come to power is this kind of challenges in America right now, because the kind of challenges they faced in terms of heavy military investments in Afghanistan and in Iraq, continuous fighting with Iran. So these all made, so slowly on one side, America is facing challenges. On the other side, China is emerging in terms of economy, in terms of military, in terms of cyber technology. So in almost all the spheres, so China is emerging. So it started becoming a competitor. So in this context, the ascent of Asia and the rise of China. So these are actually started creating challenges to the West right now. So in this context, so like there are a lot many international scholars, they used to say that the 21st century is the century of Asia. Why it is the century of Asia? Yes, on one side we have a huge population. Along with this huge population, we have a huge market. So there is a huge market right now. Half of the global world's population is in the Asia. More than half actually. You can take up to two-thirds. Because if you combine India and China itself, so we have around what you call around 40% of the world's population. So there is a there is a huge market in the Asian countries. At the same time, these are the emerging economies. So because of these emerging economies, there is a huge demand in these countries. So this is making all these multinational corporations to see towards these countries. So that's why they have to, or else why they have to come and invest such a huge amount into the Indian companies or into the Indian markets. So these are the reasons. So the first thing here we have to understand is the ascent of China, the ascent of Asia. So here again, Asia, one of the success stories is when the pandemic rose, it is the Asian countries, they started creating models. That's why the first models what we have is this Korean model. And this Korean model became very much famous. And we have the Chinese model. So when it comes to tackling the pandemic also, it is the Asian countries, they're at the forefront. So they were able to reduce, like even though, suppose for example, even if you take the case of India, though we have a huge population, even having a huge population, still with weak health infrastructure, still we are able to maintain some kind of, what you can say, so we maintain some kind of resilience. So in this way, even if you take the most populated country like China and the second most populated country like India and some of the Asian countries, they became models for containment. Whereas in the case of West, because they could not able to tackle it, because they feel like, okay, ours is democracy, we want to give more importance to the liberal values. So there is a rise of cases. Still there are a number of cases that are getting raised. So in this way, even while tackling this corona pandemic also, the Asian countries are at the forefront comparing with the West. And as I mentioned, there is a huge market, there is a huge demand for the products, so the companies can come and invest. And if you take countries like India, so we have a very stronger demographic profile. 62% of Indian population right now is in the age group of 15 to 59. That means the independent population. If you take the case of China and some of the South Asian countries like the ASEAN, there is the aging population. But if you compare with the West, there also the aging population is less. The only Asian country where the aging population is more is Japan. But you can link here Japan actually with the West. It also one of the OECD economies. So, so that demographic profile is, especially it's very strong, and there is a lot of potential because when more population is in the youth stage, the productivity will be higher. So in this way, the rise of the ascent of Asia is one of the major reasons why in the recent past we started seeing a global dynamism. That means we are trying to enter into the new kind of world order. The world order right now is under control of the West, but slowly these controls of the West, they started getting shaking. So this one of the reasons is this ascent of Asia. In this Asia, the major player is China. So here within Asia, though we have India, we have South Korea, we have Singapore, we have Asian economies, we have Japan, these are Indonesia, like we can say here this ASEAN economies, and we have India, South Korea, like that we have these very significant players. But among all the Asian players, the most significant player is China. because right now it's the world's manufacturing hub. It's the largest exporter. If you see in terms of trade, if you see the manufacturing, it is exporting 11.4 percentage. 11.4 percentage of the world's trade is under control of China. It is the largest exporter of the manufacturing products, fifth largest exporter of the software services sector, with 6.5 percentage of share. So, in this way, in the recent past, especially from the past 10 years, China started emerging as a very significant player. So, here, previously, it used to cooperate with the West because it doesn't have much of that potential. But now, this cooperation led to competition. So, now China started shifting from cooperation to competition. At some point, sometimes, it even leading to confrontation. So in this way, China right now is acting as a very potential player to give a big fight or to give a tight fight with the West. So in this way, in the recent past we have seen, that's why I told you, COVID-19 is just a catalyst. Before COVID-19 itself, the global dynamism already started. For example, here we have this trade war. The trade war between USA and China, it's a clear indication of how China got how it started readying itself to fight or to compete with America. He didn't list much with America. It said like, okay, I don't mind. So if you want to impose more customs duties, no problem. I am also ready. I'm also ready to impose more duties on your products. So in that way, it started going like one to one with America. Of course, as of now, America is a superpower. Militarily, it is having a huge potential. But in the coming days ahead, or at least in the coming years ahead, China will be definitely acting as a potential player to compete with West. At the same time, while competing, it is even getting ready itself to confront. Suppose, for example, right now, if you see this, in the case of this pandemic, when the United Nations Security Council wants to discuss about this pandemic, China did not allow because China also one of the members, one of the P5 members, one of the permanent five. So it mentioned like no, there won't be any discussion because China also got the veto power. So this veto power is actually giving an opportunity for China to influence even to these global institutions, these multilateral institutions. So in this way, in almost all the aspects, politically, economically, even in terms of influencing the institutions, everywhere right now there is a kind of influence by China. And suppose if you see economically, they came up with this initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative is a very influential one. Though there are concerns like it may create debt trap to the countries that are receiving debt from China. Whatever may be the concerns, but China is able to effectively convince the countries. Let me give a very simple example here. When the European countries, when they stopped exporting medical equipment to Italy, when Italy was in huge crisis in the just a month ago, like in the last month, it was China. It airlifted the medical equipment to Italy. So in that way, it is reaching to all those places. So where it is feeling like there is a potential, so there it is entering. On one side, when America is fighting with Iran, China is playing a very clever game with Iran. On one side, it is balancing Pakistan against India. On the other side, where there are enemies of America, with whom Iran is playing a very clever, China is playing a very clever game. At the same time, if you take the case of these financial institutions, it came up with its own financial institution, AIIB, Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, headquartered at Beijing. So in the year 2016, this particular bank was established. So with this bank, though right now it might not be a on par competitor with the World Bank or like IMF, but it took up this initiative. So it wants to lend. So it's showcasing that China alone came up with this particular bank. And it's an equal partner in the New Development Bank. the new development bank that was established by these BRICS countries. So, in this way, in almost all the segments, it can be the financial institutions or the political institutions or the countries or whichever aspect we take. In almost all the aspects, there is a presence of China. And I'm giving you a very simple example here. Take the recent WHO controversy. In the WHO controversy, it is because of China that America started claiming that WHO took the bias and it started supporting China. Whatever might be the reason, because there might be some fact in it, might not be the fact. So there might be or might not be presence of the fact, but still, when there are questions that are being raised, that indicates that for an organization like WHO, China was able to influence if it is true. So that much extent, right now, the China started rising. So this posing a huge concern to the West right now. So on one side, when the chain is rising, now let us see how the America is actually facing the challenges. On one side, we have seen the way the global pandemic is being tackled by uh, America. The number of cases rose. It became the one of the largest receiver of the cases. The number of people who got affected became very much high in USC, and it could not able to tackle them. And it's recent slogans like this America First slogan, protective slogans like first we will be giving importance to America first, or first the job should be given to the locals. So these kind of things, that means the country previously that used to promote globalization to such a level, but now this country right now promoting the protectivist measures. Protectivist measures means we won't be allowing our investments to go outside, so we want the investments to come to our country. So these are the protectionist measures, anti-globalization measures. At the same time, it intervened in Afghanistan in the name of global war on terrorism. It intervened in Iraq. It keep on fighting with Iran right now. In all these places, right now, there is no conclusion for it. There is no one. There is no cutting down. Still the issues are going on, and because of that it lost the local political will. People started like same what happened during the time of Vietnam War, how the Americans started going against the American administration. In the similar way right now, the American people are saying like why the taxpayers money is getting wasted by the American government, so why we have to make this much military expenditure, so why we have to waste this much military expenditure. So in that way America slowly started retreating. It is retreating. So this is providing the wide spaces. So these wide spaces right now China is getting ready to fill it. So in that way, once you lose the trust, because at the end of the day, how what to what extent you're enjoying your power, that depends upon your trust. But once you slowly started losing your trust, so this obviously will allow another individual to grow. So in this way right now, America is facing challenges. On one side, when America is facing challenges, if you see the European Union, the 27 country European Union, so they are also not an exception. So though they used to think like we have a shared sovereignty, that means for us, the unification is more important. At one point, we were the ones who were responsible for these world wars, but right now we are the ones who are maintaining this kind of unity. So these European Union countries are also not an exception. So these countries also started facing challenges. The first major challenge, the first major block to this unity is Brexit. The Britain's exit from the European Union. So this started creating challenges to the other countries. So now EU is more in arranging its house in the order, because right now the house itself is not properly ordered. Suppose there is a north-south divide. What is north-south divide? These southern countries like what we have this Italy, Spain, Portuguese, when they went into the crisis, then this Germany, Austria, they came for the saviors. Then right now the problem is like the number of countries are more, it is in the mode of expansion. That means it wants to reach more towards the east, that means close to the Russia, so that more number of countries will come into its fold. But the thing is, if more and more countries are facing the debt crisis, so how long they will support it? At the same time, country, very influential country like UK, if it came out of the Brexit, so it started questioning to what extent it can able to maintain its unity. So there is a intra-EU fission. That means that there is some kind of fault lines that start emerging within the EU also. And we have this financial crisis, the 2008 financial crisis, in the Eurozone countries. Eurozone means the countries having common currency called as Euro. So among the Eurozone countries, the 2008 financial crisis created a huge impact. So they got very much negatively impacted by it. At the same time, right now, EU is experimenting lot many things with democracy. Like suppose now they want to give too much, too much to the people. So for everything now they want to go consult the people. Right now, if you see, referendum has become a common thing in EU right now. For each and everything, they're going for the referendum. It can be Scottish referendum, Brexit referendum, Catalonian referendum, whatnot. So in this context, because of too much of because of too much of democracy also, so we have challenges. Then there will be populism. Populism means everybody will come and say that we will be providing these rights to you. So we will be providing these rights to you. So there is no clarity. So too much of democracy also sometimes it creates a kind of confusing situation. So in that way, the European Union is there. Even when it comes to political matters, take the case of UK. On one side, UK supports America. On the other side, it is also having its own vested interest with China. And same is the case with Germany. So the EU countries, when it comes to political matters, like suppose for example, to what extent we should deal with Russia. Some of the EU members will say that, like the ones that are close to the Russia, they say that no, we should deal in a friendly manner. Some will say that no, we should deal in an aggressive manner. So there is no political unanimity when it comes to dealing with these kind of matters, like the political matters. So in this way, in the European Union also, so we have these challenges. And when the EU is within the EU, when these kind of challenges are there, then we have these global institutions. If you take these global institutions, the first one is this WHO. Recently, we just mentioned it became the victim of this politics. Funding, America threatened like we will be stopping funds to you, and it started like you are supporting China. So in this way, on one side, these global institutions facing the challenges, and though we have these global forums like G7, the top 7 economies of the world, and we have these the top 20 economies, the G20. So in these countries also right now, they too have these financial challenges. And when it comes to United Nations level, at United Nations level, we have these P5 countries. Among the P5 countries, the 3 countries like USA, UK, France on one side, Russia and China on the other side. So they are not allowing any kind of reforms. If America takes one initiative, this China will veto it. If China takes one initiative, America will veto it. So the institutions that were created to promote a kind of peace in the global order, so these institutions are becoming weak. So these institutions slowly they may create challenges. So because of the weakening of these institutions, so when these institutions are facing challenges, so we have this West Asia. So in West Asia, as we mentioned, they are heavily depending on the oil. Now with the coming up of these new technologies like these green technologies and this renewable energy, because of this climate change initiative, because anti-climate change initiatives, so it because the revenue that is coming to the West Asia is mostly from the oil. Now they are in the state of dilemma. What we have to do, what are the alternatives for us? But for countries like Saudi Arabia making alternatives, they are investing heavily into the tourism sector and all. But still, so they have these challenges, internal tensions. If you take the case of West Asia, means we will say like terror activities, exporter of terrorism. Though it's not true to a maximum extent, but still, so their internal tensions being exploited by the global players. So this eventually creating challenges within the West Asian countries itself. If anything happens to Iran, Russia will come. If anything happens to Saudi Arabia, then America will come. And take the case of Syria, it became the what you call global playground for these kind of politics. And the same is the case with Iraq. So on one side they are reeling under poverty, on the other side the oil prices got dipped. So this creating huge challenges to the West Asia. So why I am discussing this? So this West Asian politics also plays very crucial role, because all these countries they have a very vested interest in the West Asia also. So if West Asia is in the state of turmoil, so this will be having an impact on the global order also. So the global politics also will be influenced by the West Asian politics. So in this context, West Asia also having these kind of challenges. So when these many challenges are there, where India will fit? Yes, right now, frankly speaking, we are in the advantageous position. If you take the case of India, yes, we have our own challenges, we have our challenges, we have terror related challenges, we have our own internal challenges. But if we clearly comes up with the proper reorientation challenges, reorientation strategies, then definitely India is actually in the advantageous position right now. Because for us, mostly we have a domestic demand driven economy. Yes, right now we are also exporting. Now, if you pay more attention to the exports, because for us right now, exports means the other country should come and invest and they will export. So, for that, if we are able to come up with the proper policy mechanisms, so because of these challenges, definitely because there is a huge market in India, so everybody is having their eye on India. So in this context, if we are able to reorient our strategies, like suppose for example, providing better economic platforms, having because we already have the stronger political system. Fortunately, in the last few years, we are able to maintain a stable, we are able to maintain this kind of stable politics. Because previously when we were under this coalition politics, we used to have some kind of policy paralysis, like policy logjam, we used to say. If they want to take any initiative, and there used to be some challenges. But at least right now we have a political stability. So because we have the political stability, if we come up with a stronger economic policies, the policies that are actually pushing the growth, for which using proper technology, creating demand. Right now most of the forces like this labor force is in the unorganized sector, make them more into the formal sector, provide social security to them, improve the quality of your exports, right, provide more options for the investor, the foreign direct investor to come and invest in the country. At the same time we maintain equidistance with everybody. So for us everybody is equal. So, of course, right now we are leaning towards the West. It does not mean that we are not maintaining close relations with Russia. At the same time, we are also maintaining good relations with China. Politically, we do not have much good relations with China, but so definitely China is our competitor. But still, our relationship with China is fine. The economic relation is very much fine. But it does not mean that we should take China for granted. Because China is making, when it comes to India, to control India, China is making its nexus with Pakistan. So then it wants to completely control, it wants to surround India. So that's why it is investing everywhere. It is investing in Sri Lanka, investing in Bangladesh, investing in Nepal, investing in Pakistan, investing in Maldives. What we call this as this string of pearls. So this we have to be very much careful. To our neighbors, especially, we should give confidence. The neighbors who are being influenced, to them we have to provide confidence. Like to Bhutan, to Nepal, to Bangladesh. With respect to Pakistan, we might not be able to tackle effectively because we have our own historical challenges for that. But at least for the rest of our neighborhood, we have to provide confidence. And we should make our exports qualitative and quantitative, diversify your exports, allow more foreign direct investments. So instill a kind of confidence into the minds of the investors. So this gives a very good opportunity for India right now, okay, to emerge as a key potential player in the next coming days ahead. And right now, when it comes to the youth, right now in the world, India is the country we have the more number of youth population. So where the country where the youth population is high, there the chances of growing, like the chances of amplifying its economy is very much high. China already used it, Japan already used it, and the South Korea already used it. So now it's time for India. So that's why India, if you see from any angle, we are at the opportunistic position. So this with some slight challenges, but we have to effectively utilize it, because right now if you do not utilize this opportunity will not come back again, because once the youth population slowly reaching to the old age, then the potential the productivity will be reduced. So this shouldn't be happening. So in that way, if we are able to utilize, then we will be also in the we can effectively tackle this global dynamism. So how these countries, suppose for example US China trade war, so let us tap this potential, let us attract those companies to come and invest in India, so let us strengthen our make in India. So in that way if we do, so we will be in the better advantageous position. So what is the kind of impact this global dynamism of this corona and this recent one, how they create? So because this corona, this will act as a kind of, this create a kind of polarization means the world will be divided into multiple groups. So there won't be much interaction. That means there is only cross-border trade, not much of global trade. At the same time, unpredictability. What will happen tomorrow? Nobody knows. We may reach to that kind of situation. That means what kind of strategies we make. Because if there is no proper order, then obviously there will be unpredictability. And if countries like America, if they go for this protectionism, it goes against the global order. It goes against the globalization itself. So if every country goes for the protectionism, then the major sufferers are the least developed countries. And if these kind of things happens, when there is a rise of poverty and unemployment, they may lead to terror activities. Where most of the terror activities will be coming up, where there is a poverty and unemployment. So along with poverty and unemployment, if there is lack of political stability, then there will be rise of fundamentalism. Fundamentalism will lead to terror activities. And what we are trying for, these climate change efforts, they may come under the backseat. If there is no global unity to discuss about climate change, because climate change is not a country specific issue, right? It's a global issue. If the global issue has to be tackled, there need to be global unanimity for it. So the global unity should be there. So these are the kinds of impact. There is a polarization, unpredictability, protectionism, revival of terror, and impact on the climate change initiatives. Already we have seen America, it withdrew from the Paris climate talks. If you take the case of your institution, it came out of the UNHRC. If you take the case of economic deals, it came out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So if you take up these kind of things, then ultimately it creates an impact on the global order. So what we should do? So what should be the way forward? So the way forward should be, first and foremost thing, multilateralism. Multilateralism means giving importance to the multilateral institutions. Like we have to strengthen the United Nations. So we have to strengthen the WHO. So we have to strengthen the World Trade Organization. So the multilateral institutions has to be strengthened. There is no other alternative way. So if the global order, if it has to maintain the peace and stability, then the multilateral institutions is must. They need to be strengthened. Same is the case with India. Suppose, for example, if India wants to maintain regional stability, in the organizations like SARC, BIMSTEC, they need to be strengthened. You need to give importance to these regional organizations. At the same time, there must be reforms in the United Nations, especially in the United Nations Security Council. It's a long pending reform. The P5 members right now not agreeing, but at least right now the demand should increase. Countries like India, Germany, Japan, Brazil, and some African countries. So they have to strengthen their demand for reforms in the United Nations Security Council. At the same time, these financial institutions right now they are being dominated by the West. So let other countries also let come and participate in that. Let them have more voting shares. And let's pay more attention to the least developed countries. Least developed countries, we should give more importance to them, because if there is a climate change, if there is a terror activity, they are the major sufferers. So let us give more importance to these least developed countries. Strengthen South-South cooperation means cooperation among the developing countries. So the cooperation among the developing countries also should be increased. Because if these countries, if they cooperate with each other, they know their problems. Because the problems of the developing countries are unique, like poverty, unemployment, okay, illiteracy. These all are the challenges with respect to the developing countries. So this cooperation among the developing countries or the emerging economies, like we have this BRICS initiative. So like that, these things we have to encourage. So in that way, if we are able to do, then at least even if there is a change of world order, if there is a dynamism in the global order, but still we can maintain peace and some stability. Because without peace, if the world order is changing, so then that creates a huge challenge not only to our country but also to the whole globe, but also to the whole world. So this shouldn't happen. So because at the end of the day, the peace has to be prevailed. So in that way, yes, COVID-19 as a catalyst will create some kind of challenges to the world order, but we shouldn't feel panic about it. If we come up with proper reforms, proper procedural and institutional reforms, then we can tackle this pandemic created global dynamism also. So with that, I am concluding the session. Now I am posting one question here. This is with respect to India specific question. How India should build up its strategies so that post COVID-19 normalcy, it can further strengthen as a key player in the global politics. So I just mentioned like what are the key challenges right now to the global order, where India is right now, how we should tackle it. So in that way, you can write a 250 words answer. With that, I'm concluding. Thank you.